29, I'm 80, I finally learned why my husband never let me attend. One funeral, the thickness was behind the heart. I felt it through my thumb before I saw it. 3 weeks after we buried him, I was folding Eli's black church coat for the sale, and my fingers caught on something stitched flat inside the lining. The bedroom smelled of cedar and barn dust and my own old skin. I lit the kerosene lamp, though it was only afternoon, and I sat down on the pine floor with the coat in my lap. Bed behind me was empty where he used to pull off his boots. I did not know yet. What I am about to tell you, I have not said aloud to anyone. My name is Mary, of Yoder Ridge near Mount Hope, Ohio, and on this channel I tell the stories I kept folded for 61 winters. If you have ever sat beside a man whose silences were louder than his words, stay close and subscribe so you do not lose me. Tell me in the comments where you are listening from tonight. I did not open the lining yet. I pressed my palm flat against the coat and felt the small, hard shape under the wool, no bigger than a child's hand, and I told myself I would finish folding first. That was a lie I have told my whole life. Finish the kneading first, finish the wash first, finish the season first. Eli's coat smelled of him still, of pipe smoke and harness oil and the cold barn in November. I held it the way I used to hold our babies when they were sleeping, and I did not want to wake them. Thickness sat under my thumb like a second heart. In our district, a funeral is not a thing you choose. You go. You carry the green bean casserole in the chipped white dish. You stand where the women stand. You sing from the Ausbund in the long, slow way our grandmothers sang. To stay home on a funeral day is to speak without opening your mouth, and the whole community hears it. For 61 years Eli spoke that silence, and I walked into those rooms alone. I never knew how to answer the eyes. If any part of this is finding you tonight, please know I am only telling it once, and I am telling it slow. The first time was a wet Tuesday in 1962. I was 23 winters old and 6 months a wife. Bishop Miller's Sarah had gone in her sleep, and I laid Eli's good coat across the bed the night before, the way my mother taught me. He came in from the milking, looked at the coat, and said, "I will not go." I thought I had misheard him. I waited. He did not say it again. He walked out to the barn and stayed there for 4 hours, and I walked to that funeral alone in my new prayer cap, and I felt 47 sets of eyes follow me to the bench where the wives sit. Nobody asked. Asking is not what we do. That night I came home and the lamp was already low. Eli was sitting on the edge of our bed in the half-dark with the black coat across his knees. His head was bent. His hand was pressed flat against the inside of the chest panel, the same place my thumb had found the thickness 3 weeks ago. He did not look up when I came in. I stood in the doorway in my stockinged feet and watched my husband hold his own coat the way a mother holds. Something small, I did not ask. A new bride does not ask. I told myself he was tired. I told myself the cold had got into his bones. I told myself many things that year. His older sister Anna came through the next autumn for a quilting frolic. She was a tall woman, plain-spoken, kind, who could thread a needle in lamplight without squinting. We were alone in the kitchen, rinsing cups, when she set her hand on my wrist and said one thing only. He was not always like that. Something in him stopped when he was 12. She did not look at me when she said it. She looked at the soap on the water. I was 31 then, with 2 children at my hip and a third on the way, and I filed her sentence away the way a woman files a folded receipt in the back of a drawer. Gelassenheit, the yielding, had taught me not to push. I would not understand what she said for 49 more years. The pattern only deepened. In 1971, his own father went, and Eli did not go. In 1984, our neighbor Samuel, who Eli had built a barn with in 1958, went, and Eli did not go. The women began to leave a small space around me, at the gatherings, the way you leave space around a chair that has been broken and mended too many times. I learned to carry the casserole with both hands and my chin up. I learned not to flinch when the bishop's wife paused before greeting me. I told myself my husband was a good man in every room but the funeral room, and that had to be enough, because it was what I had. In 1999, his mother passed. She was 86 and had outlived 3 of her children. The morning of the burial, Eli put on the black coat. I almost wept at the sight of him in it, because I thought finally he will cross the threshold with me. He walked beside me down the lane. He walked into the yard. He walked as far as the back fence of the burying ground, and there he stopped. He stood at that fence in the cold March wind, with his beard moving sideways and his hand pressed flat over his chest, over the same spot, and he watched his mother go into the ground from 40 feet away. I watched him from inside the circle of mourners. He looked like a boy. He looked like a boy who had been left at a fence a long time ago and had not been able to climb over it since. 3 weeks ago I buried him. Tonight, 3 weeks and 1 day later, I sat on the pine floor with his coat in my lap and the kerosene lamp burning in the afternoon. And I took up my sewing scissors. My hands were steady. They have always been steady, even when the rest of me was not. I made one small cut into the lining behind the heart, no bigger than the length of my smallest fingernail. Something dark blue and very old slid halfway out. I stopped. I could not breathe. And then I understood that for 61 years, I had been married to a man I had only half met. I did not pull it out at first. I sat there with the scissors still in my hand and the half-slid square of blue cloth resting against the black wool, and the lamp guttered low the way lamps do when the wick has burned crooked. The room was very quiet, the kind of quiet that has a sound to it, like snow falling on snow. I set the scissors down on the floorboard beside my knee. I lifted the cloth out with 2 fingers, the way you lift something living. It was no bigger than a child's palm. The weave was the old kind, woven by hand before the mills came in. It smelled of nothing. It smelled of 1942. I held it on my open hand under the lamp, and Anna's sentence walked back into the room and sat down across from me. Something in him stopped when he was 12. I did the small arithmetic on my fingers there on the pine floor. Eli was born in 1930. 12 would have been 1942. The summer the elders did not quite speak about in front of the children. The pond behind the old Yoder place, where the willows lean low and the water is darker than it should be in July. I had heard that pond mentioned once, in a kitchen, when I was 11, and the women had stopped talking when I came in. I went down the stairs with the blue cloth pressed flat against my palm. I did not let it go. Kitchen was cold. The wood stove was out. I lit the small lamp on the table, and I took the family Bible down from the shelf where it had sat for 61 years between the salt cellar and the seed catalog. I opened the back cover. Eli's mother had written there, in pencil, in a hand so faded it was almost the color of the paper itself, one line I had read 100 times and never connected to anything. Jonas, called home, age 9, July 1942. No surname, no story, just the line. I sat down at the kitchen table with the blue square in front of me and I said his name out loud. Jonas, I said it once. I did not cry. I did not collapse the way a woman in a story collapses. I just sat in the small ring of lamplight and let the name settle into the wood of the table where my husband had eaten his breakfast for 61 years and never once spoken it. The blue cloth was from the boy's funeral suit. Eli had cut a small square from it before the burial, when he was 12 years old and no one was watching, and he had carried that square inside the lining of every black coat he ever owned for the rest of his life. He could not stand at another graveside. He had never finished standing at the first one. Both things were true. Eli was a good husband, the man who carved me a butter mold the winter I lost our first baby, the man who sat with me through a fever in 1977 and did not sleep for 3 nights. And Eli was a 12-year-old boy who had been told to watch his little brother by the water and had looked away for the length of one bird's song. He carried that boy into our marriage. He carried that boy to the threshold of every funeral and could not cross. He did not keep me from going. He stayed home so I would not have to stand at a fence beside a man breaking in public. And I, for 61 winters, mistook his grief for stubbornness. I judged him in the small private rooms of my heart. I let the women of the district think what they thought, and I did not defend him. because he had never given me the words. If you are still with me tonight, I want to ask you something, and you can answer me only if it feels right. Have you ever lived beside someone for years, washed his shirts, kneaded his bread, lain beside him in the dark, and only learned the true shape of his sorrow after he was gone? Tell me below, even one line. I want to know I am not the only woman who walked through a long marriage half blind. I am telling you this so you will go and look, while there is still time, at the lining of the coats of the people you love. Our ways did not give a 12-year-old boy a place to put a drowned brother. He was told the Lord giveth, and the Lord taketh. He was told not to mourn too loud, because that would be hochmut, a pride in your own pain. So he did what a quiet boy does in a quiet house. He cut a square of his brother's suit when no one was looking, and he sewed it behind his own heart, and he walked through 69 more years of his life with that boy pressed against his ribs. Ordnung kept us upright through hard winters and hard losses. It did not always teach us how to bend. I do not say this to blame. I say it because it is the truth I lived next to and did not see. So if you are 60 or 70 or 80, and you are folding the clothes of someone who has gone on ahead of you, and your fingers catch on a thickness in the lining you do not understand, sit down on the floor. Do not throw it out. Do not be in a hurry. It is the part of them that could not be said in daylight. It is theirs. And now, gently it is yours. Light the lamp even if the sun is up. Use the small scissors, not the big ones. Cut slow. Whatever falls into your hand will be smaller than you feared and heavier than you thought. You will not be the same woman when you stand up from that floor, and that is all right. Some understandings are only allowed to arrive after the door has closed. I am 80 winters old. Tonight, by the same kerosene lamp where I found the cloth, I have threaded my needle, and I have sewn Jonas's blue square into the lining of my own black dress behind the heart, so that when my time comes, my Eli and his little brother will both walk me home.